What's up, guys? So today I have this Xbox 360. It's a limited edition, cool red one that I got from my buddy Rax, a good friend of mine, also fellow YouTuber. And this one's really cool because it's a GameStop refurbished one. So Xbox 360s, they were notorious for dying, having the red ring of death. I'm sure everybody's heard of that one by now. And GameStop was actually taking red ring of death Xboxes and then refurbishing them and then reselling them. So in this video I get to show you, we're gonna open it up and then see what it's like on the inside and see what GameStop actually did to it. And now I actually reached out to Mr. Mario, who has done several videos all about what GameStop refurbished Xbox 360s. So he's actually going to take over for this whole video, kind of going more in depth as to what they do, and I'm going to show what it looks like on the inside, and then maybe we'll do some bonus controller LED mod videos at the end or something like that, who knows. So let's just take this thing apart and let's see what Mr. Mario has to say about it.
Hey, thanks for having me on here. Paul ended up inviting me onto this segment, and what can I say? When it comes to retro gaming arts, I like the things they do. I like the Xbox 360, and if I can talk about some of the stuff that GameStop has done to these poor systems, I mean, hey, that sounds like an awesome collaboration to me. Okay, yep, damn it, I knew it! I knew it! I knew it! Anyways, yeah, what has been shown here is kind of typical of what happens with Xbox 360s, specifically the GameStop refurbished ones. Typically the ones that they'll just take in, clean up the outsides, reformat the system, and put back out for sale. Those are going to be dirty and nasty on the inside, but they haven't had their insides gutted, thankfully. While as any that have been refurbished have been touched by GameStop's hands. And right now, current day 2019, because I have not bought a 360 from them in the past year, I really can't verify if that is directly the case, if they are still doing it to this day, but this was something that they were doing for years and years and years and years, and something that I know they were doing even as recent as 2017, really after the heyday of the Xbox 360. Again, to their refurbished ones, not to every single one that was coming in. There were two mods that were specifically being done. One of them was the fan mod. Now this fan mod, some people will refer to it as the 12-volt fan mod, because that's typically what the easier one was to do. This one is actually specifically a 8.7 volt fan mod.
That's actually really interesting. I didn't know that. I've always called it the 12-volt fan mod because I thought it was 12 volts. And it kind of makes sense because when I turned the 360 on, it was nowhere near as loud as I thought it was going to be. I've done other fan mods and systems before where they get much louder, so it makes sense.
And they make use of this by splicing the fans into the DVD drive's wires itself. Now GameStop does it a cleaner way, as opposed to us, like a regular person, cutting off the connector, cutting into the DVD drive's wires and splicing them together however you have it. They do a cleaner setup of it, and they have some nice funky adapters and all that stuff. It's the same thing. And from what I understand, that can also be bad, you know, long term for the system as well too. So you really don't want to be tapping into the DVD drive like that. I am guilty of doing it. I've done it to a few systems, and yeah, it can keep them artificially cool. But one important thing to note is that the Xbox 360 is also pretty capable of cooling itself down. So typically, if you have a stock system, it will be just fine as long as you keep it clean. If you have a hard-modded system, you don't even need to splice in here. You can just adjust your fan settings within any of the lovely applications that are available on the system. Now, the second mod, and this is the dangerous one for the lifespan of the Xbox, and the sad one as well too, is the bolt mod, or the screw and washer mod, or fix, or whatever you want to call it. This involves taking the heat sinks away from the system by, you know, removing the X clamps at the bottom of the motherboard, removing the screws that are on the heat sinks, and then replacing them with nylon washers and screws of some kind, like it could be Phillips head or what have you. It really doesn't matter. It's screws and washers, or bolts and washers, however you want to call them. I've heard this been called the bolt mod multiple times. And this is terrible for the system, terrible. In the short term, a lot of people will say it fixed their system, it worked, it was just fine. And there are some systems where they seem to get lucky and you can perform this mod on them and they work for years, but a lot of times you perform this mod, it'll work for a few months, it'll work for a few weeks, it'll work for a few days, maybe even as little as a few hours. And every time you do it, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And I'm not even going to talk about, any of the towel tricks or what have you. Those are bad, but let's today focus on GameStop here. How about that? With GameStop, what they end up doing is they take this fix, which has been proven to be bad for the system and not work for a multitude of reasons. First of all, when you end up doing that, you end up applying more pressure to the CPU and the GPU just by using those screws to really tighten up everything and make sure that that heatsink is coming down crashing, so to speak, on the CPU or the GPU chips respectively. So that is why they end up typically working. And by working, I mean the system will boot and you can play it and all that stuff, because you are making a better contact short term, but long term you are squishing that into the system. On top of that, when you put the motherboard all assembled and everything back into the console itself, because of the bolts, because they're really not going to be very flush with everything, you are going to bend the board. It's going to stay like that. And then it's just going to get hot and it's going to get cold and you're going to prolong it with a lot of play. So then what happens is, because the heat sinks and the previous screws and everything were used to fasten everything together, everything was designed flush, everything was fastening through the chassis itself, when you end up removing that, guess what? Your board is flexing even more, and it's doing a lot of that over its time frame that it's alive. And it won't be alive that much longer. So the downside of this as well too is, even if you get to your 360 in time while it is still working and you end up taking off all that stuff and revert it back to stock X-clamp screws and all that stuff, a lot of times the damage has already been done. You might be able to prolong your life of the system, but damage has kind of been done at that point. And GameStop has done this to countless systems. And let's not even talk about the cheap thermal paste they're using. And I think the worst part is as well too, they even did it to late model fat consoles. They did it to Jasper motherboards.
So my particular motherboard that you actually see in this video is a Jasper, and one of the things that the Xbox 360 did earlier on in the Jasper motherboards was increase the beefiness of the heatsink. And I feel that that was a large improvement. And what's really funny is, if you ever open an Xbox One, it's got the beefiest, most diesel heatsink with a giant fan on it. So it's pretty funny that they continue to improve on it. But this motherboard that I have another Jasper Xbox 360, no red ring, no GameStop, nothing, works totally fine.
Jasper motherboards, in case you do not know, are the most reliable out of all the Xbox 360 models. So, at least the fat ones here. I'm going to exclude the slims for now, but at least the fat ones. And those ones did not need any sort of screw fix or anything like that on there, so it is what it is, unfortunately. GameStop just kind of continued to do that with their refurbished units. Now, what fixes should be done for these systems? Well, first of all, if they're overheating, they just need a good cleaning and, replace the thermal paste on them. If they are red ringing, however, most of the time that can be resolved by, the best fix you can do is reball the CPU or the GPU, depending on which one it is. The other fix that people were doing was reflowing them. And people argue that they're not going to be the best on there because, yes, you can weaken the chips and such, which is why I would recommend more of a reball. And even at that, if you're able to go with all new parts, that could be optimal. But most of the time, BGA repair people are going to take off that chipset, completely reball everything on the chip and on the motherboard itself, and then put it back on, and that will resolve really most of your issues there at that point, once you get it all cleaned up and fixed up and such. And aim for a reball over reflow if you can. Those are the fixes that should have been done. And even in all honesty, I really doubt that those are going to be happening in GameStop's facilities. And when I'm talking about a reball or a reflow, I'm talking about using the actual proper equipment and everything for this, not any type of heat gun nonsense. Don't do that. Seriously, do not do that. Now, what needs to be replaced on these systems? Really nothing. If you maintain them and keep them clean, they seem to be fine. You really don't need to replace the X-clamps or any of the screws that are there. Just make sure you take everything off with care, fix it properly, put it back on with care, make sure the X-clamps are tensioned, that is the big one, and you should be good to go. And this is a lot of stuff that, some repairmen knew about. They were really trying to spout this out, but because there were so many game shops, including GameStop, that were doing shady, underhanded fixes like this, That's how we kind of got the bad rap for these systems as well too, with the used ones just really not working all too well. So make sure if you do find one that's going to repair your system, whether it be a game shop or a repair shop, make sure they're going to do it properly. Try and figure out what hardware they're going to use, even if you just see the method. That works out well enough.
So I just wanted to say thanks to Mr. Mario for coming on and explaining this a little bit more in depth. I'm sure if you've checked out my channel, you'll see that the Xbox content is very, not a lot. I primarily do a lot more of everything else. So it was nice to have somebody who's a little bit more familiar with it talk to it about you guys. I thought y'all would think it was cool to see something different. And I just wanted to say thank you to all you guys for watching, especially if you're right here towards the end waiting for that bonus video. Thank you for making it all this way. Actually, with the bonus video, it was too long. I couldn't make it really nice and short as a quick little video, so I'm just gonna upload it as a whole separate video soon. So thank you everybody. Thank you to everybody who recently subscribed. We want to check out more. There's a lot of videos that I've made, and I'm still going to be making videos. So thank you to everybody involved. Thank you to Rax for the Xbox 360. I'll put Rax's channel, Mr. Mario's channel in the comments if you guys are in the whatever. Press the button to see the more. You can see whatever description is the word that I was looking for. So just thank you guys very, very much for waiting for videos and all that stuff. I really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed this one.